This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.
Ben Settle, compulsively punchable.
He's the kind of guy who you'd probably just punch on the arm really hard if you ever met him.
Worshipped by feminists.
He pokes fun at feminism and women, just joking around, his whole sandwich making thing.
Mildly inspiring.
Yes, I recommend the Ben Settle Show, and anybody who isn't on it, that's their own loss.
Somewhat authentic.
Ben is a very distinct personality. There's no fluff. I can't stand fluff.
Syrupy sweet.
Tells it like it is, and sometimes may not be the most polite manner, shall we say.
Kind of useful.
So I have spent tens of thousands of dollars on coaching and masterminds, and I've learned more from Ben Settle's podcast than from any of that.
Semi-intelligent.
Ben sounds like a crazy guy at times, but he's one of the smartest individuals in marketing I've ever met.
Mostly forgettable.
He's always in the forefront of my mind.
The BenSettle.com podcast begins now.
This is Ben Settle, the BenSettle.com elite, non-elite, I don't know what you want to call it, Jonathan, podcast. So a few months ago, I solicited questions for the show because I wanted to do some Q&A shows. Jonathan, I think we only did one Q&A show the entire 137 episode run of the old podcast. Yeah. So I want to do more of those. Yeah, I don't know why I never did those before. I think it's because I really just cared about what I thought and nobody else thought. Big shock there. But I'm going to do more of those. So I don't know, man. I have enough fodder to last probably 5 or 6 shows of just Q&As. So we're not going to do like back-to-back Q&A shows or anything like that. But I will do them kind of intermittently like I do the email players rules. And if you, Mr. Listener, not you, Jonathan, but Mr. or Miss or Mrs. Listener, whatever you are, ever have questions you want to submit to the show, just send them to me at ben@bensettle.com or just go to my site at bensettle.com and use the contact tab and submit your question. Make them pithy though. Jonathan, one thing I had to shorten these questions. People write me these 2-page dissertations when they could just too long didn't read it for me. And so some of those people are going to be punished in the form of me not answering their questions. So that's just the way, that's the way it goes. We are not fair. We don't believe in fairness or equality on this show. We've already covered that, but I am going to help the people out a little bit today. I think we're going to cover probably, 5 or 6 questions. And we'll run with it. So the first question, Jonathan, unless you have anything you want to say before I roll with this. Is there anything, any housekeeping, anything that needs to be said?
No, I think we need to hop into this. But I will say one thing. I was working with Keith on the album cover, and he and I had to go back 8 times because we couldn't get BenSettle.com podcast to work for us. So damn confusing. But that's besides the point.
Well, there's a reason I'm doing, I might as well this was nobody asked this question, but I'm going to answer it as if somebody was smart enough to ask it.
I'm asking.
And that is why am I calling the podcast bensettle.com? Well, I don't think anyone else is doing that. Everybody has a clever title. The old show was just what I thought was a clever title, a word you came up with, antipreneur. But because why not have it be branded to you in your website so that there's no confusion out there? That's pretty much the reason. It's very simple. It's very direct. It's very obvious where I want you to go if you see the name, and so be it. This kind of positioning stuff is a dull, unpolished object, Jonathan. It's not a bright, sexy, shiny object, and that's why people get confused by it. But all right, anyway, moving on. So the very first question comes from the lovely and talented and frankly, needs to be put in her place a little more often by her man, I think, Jonathan. But, that's another show for another time. Monique Nelson, who actually she does, at the time of this recording, she actually doesn't have a man. So that's the question she's asking. But when she gets one, I think she needs to send him over to me so that I can prep him for what he's going to be having to put up with. So Monique Nelson says, how does a successful, ambitious, and attractive woman... So, Jonathan, you think I have a big ego for her to... She's like, I'm successful, ambitious, and attractive. You got to, I think her ego might actually match mine in some ways. Who has no plans to become a stripper or hooker or anything other than she is. And for her to have such a closed mind, Jonathan, closing her mind to being a stripper or a hooker, living up there in Canada. I don't know. I think that's her issue. But find men who are even more successful and ambitious so that they are able to unapologetically be a man, and she capitalized man, in the totally stereotypical sense of the word. So No, I rudely kind of interjected my thoughts into that. So let me read the question. It's like, how does a successful, ambitious, and attractive woman who has no plans to become a stripper or hooker or anything other than she is find men who are even more successful and ambitious so that they are able to unapologetically be a man in the totally stereotypical sense of the word? Now, something I know about Monique, okay, because she's told me this. She keeps in touch with me on a regular basis through email and all that, shares her thoughts, tries to argue with me. Of course, she is unsuccessful in her arguments with me, but she is kind of left-wing, kind of a hippie-ish, left-wing, liberal chick. That's what I gathered from her. Not obnoxious about it. She's not like a blue-haired feminist with hairy armpits or anything like that. None of that kind of stuff. She's a normal person, but my guess is she is I'm guessing this, and I'm only going on pure guessing here, that the circle she run in is probably liberal guys who have absolutely no nutsack whatsoever, who kiss her ass, who put her on a pedestal and are white knighting her and are afraid to tell her to shut the hell up when she needs to be told to shut the hell up, Jonathan. That would be my guess. Okay, that would be now, you call that however you want. You can say, oh, Ben's being mean. But the truth is, I'm guessing she's just surrounded by yes men. And that probably turns her off. That would be my guess. I can't speak for her. She didn't go into that much detail on this. But here's the answer, though. Other than changing her circle of influence, her champion circle of influence of social justice warriors, I would say, assuming that's what she hangs out with. So I'm making some huge assumptions here, Jonathan. Let's be fair to her now. I'm being very general here and generalizing, but I know people like this, and anyone listening, do what you want with that information. But here's the answer. Here is the answer. Monique, Jonathan, Cupcake, whoever's listening to this. And this goes for, and by the way, a variation of this question was asked by several people. I just choose to pick on Monique because that's just what I do. I pick on her. But the reality is a lot of people ask variations of this question. So this is why I'm starting with this one. Anyway, the answer, I keep building up to, the answer is sell them what they're buying. Okay. Monique, John, I have to go into lecture mode here. Nobody cares that you're successful. No guy cares that you're ambitious, okay? They do want the attractive part. So you got that going, assuming that's what they think of her, of course.
Right.
She's got that going for her. So she's got that. But she's selling, it sounds like she's selling what they're not buying. Now, do you remember, Jonathan, in the intro we had in the Ben Settle Show podcast, and I had those clips, and I said one of the clips was that master's degree is not going to make your ass look any nicer. People think I'm just being sarcastic, and I am, but there's also a lot of truth to that too. So you got to sell what they're buying, and they're not buying ambition, and they're not buying success. Now, they're not bad qualities to have. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying those aren't bad. I would find those to be an asset personally, but not on the front end. That's the back end, so to speak.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. But, there's a lot of depth to this answer, though, into this question, because this applies to selling anything to anyone. It goes beyond this topic. You got to sell people what they're buying. And, unfortunately, people don't understand. People like Monique, and I know many, many girls like Monique, very successful people, very ambitious, and very single. And they claim to like it, Jonathan. They claim to actually want to be single. But we know that's like a guy saying he doesn't ever want to get laid. It doesn't make any sense. Of course you don't want to be single. Just admit it. It's okay. Monique, it's okay. Just admit it. Monique and all your people like you, don't worry about it. Just okay. You just stick around the bensettle.com podcast. We're going to get you up and going. In fact, any guy out there listening to this who wants that, you go ahead and send me an email and I will play matchmaker, especially if you live up in the Vancouver, BC area. Jonathan, I'm just opening a huge can of worms here.
Sure. New dating service.
I'm going to be the new matchmaking service. But anyway, this goes on anything. Sell people what they're buying and you'll make more sales. And this goes for the most important sale that you can make. Now, Jonathan, am I off on this? Now, in your opinion, as a very happily married man to a very cool girl, isn't that really what it is? Didn't Cupcake sell you what you were buying? She probably didn't come at you all aggressive and like trying to compete with you and all that.
I already have the balls, and this is her. I mean, if I can be so blunt, she's like flashing her lady balls here. I say replace successful and ambitious with submissive and accommodating, and you will score.
Oh, this. See, if I say that, Jonathan, I get blasted. Okay, because I've said that kind of stuff, and I'll get blasted by people. People get all mad at me. You say it, maybe you have a little more credibility in this because you're producer Jonathan. But that's what it comes down to: agreeableness. There's nothing wrong with banter and all that, but sometimes dude is not looking for another dude.
Right.
We already have friends that are successful and ambitious. You got to bring something to the table that our friends don't have, and like it or lump it, that's how it is. All right, I'm moving on to the next question, Jonathan, before a large, sharp object comes flying through the window at me here.
I'm glad I don't hang out in your Facebook group.
I know. We need to bring you in the fold a little more. I'm going to tag the hell out of you in there until you can't resist it. Okay, so second question. This one comes from a gentleman named Rob Woodgate. I'd be interested to hear you talk more on how being abrasive helps you succeed, over and above the way it scares away the snowflakes and bunnies who need endless hand-holding and never take action. I get the tell it like it is builds trust aspect, but it seems there's a fine line between coming off as someone to be respected and coming off as an asshat that repels everybody. Okay, so there's a reason I picked this question, because I think it's a good question. I really do, because you have a lot of people just copycat stuff. Oh, look what Shane Hunter's doing. I got to be like that. Look what Ben Settle's doing. I got to be like that. Look what producer Jonathan is doing. We got to be like that. You got to be you. If you're not like, in real life, I have no problem being kind of abrasive to repel the people away from me I don't want around me. It's just how it is. It's not a tactic. It's a principle by which I live. You don't have to be like that, Rob. You take your personality and you just be you. Okay? Now, if you happen to be like, you wouldn't be asking this question if you didn't find it uncomfortable to be kind of abrasive. So, and you also have to modulate this to your market. Jonathan, when I sold in the weight loss niche, I didn't go all Ben Settle on the emails, I didn't release the Kraken on them. Okay. You have to modulate it to your personality and to your audience. And, maybe you shouldn't be that way. Maybe you're just a super good, nice dude. So be a super good, nice dude, but just don't let anyone walk all over you. That's it. This is all in my villains book. And, I don't know if Rob has read it or not, but it's not about you changing your personality into a mold of something that you're not. It's about taking who you are and just being you and having an opinion and saying what you want to say. You don't have to do it in an abrasive manner. If that's not how you hunt, so to speak, then don't hunt that. You hunt with the weapon that you like. If you're better off using a spear than a crossbow, use a spear. If you're a fisherman and you don't even like to hunt, then you fish. Okay. I don't know if this analogy makes any sense to anybody, but you have to play the game that you know how to play. You can't play someone else's game or you're always going to be losing. So that could be an email player's rule, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So hopefully that answers that one. Next question. This is from a person named Connor Kelly. And I love how he starts this question. Why is El Bembo? This is what Monique, are you listening to this? Are you listening? This is how you address somebody that success and ambitious. Why is El Bembo? A lot of business seminars prattle on about the importance of having a detailed, long-term vision for your business, and they spend a disproportionate amount of time having you think and group share about it. And Connor is absolutely right about that, and it drives me nuts. So I hate going to these stupid seminars and masterminds and all that. What's your take on it? You seem to have a pretty minimalist approach. Do you have a grand vision for your business? What I have is actually I have a couple different missions, Connor. This is in my villains book too. Not that I'm trying to push it or anything. I guess I am kind of trying to push it, whatever. But the first chapter of that book is about, actually it's the second chapter, is a villain without a mission is like a man without testicles. Okay. You got to have the vision and a mission. You got to have something you're fighting for and you're striving for. Now, does that mean you have to come up with a 100-year game plan and all? No. All I'm saying is you go as far as you can see, and when you get there, you'll get farther. That's the way I go about things. Now, for example, if I go out, let's say I go out on the ocean here in the boat, across the street, and I climb in a boat and I go, and maybe I want to do charter fishing. There's only so far I can see ahead. I can't see 100. I'm not going to see, even though I'm right across from Japan, I think, Jonathan, if you were looking at a map, I can't see Japan from here. But I can see a certain distance, and I'll go to that distance. And when I get there, I'll see farther. And that's how I treat business. That's how I treat everything, pretty much. Is this the only way to go about it? Absolutely not. You do whatever works for you. But I like to break things down into the most simple steps as possible. So to me, it's a non-issue. And, if somebody asked me to go sit in a group and like emote about this with everybody else in the seminar, I'd probably get kicked out of the seminar within 10 minutes. Because I would mock and call the whole thing. I would call the whole thing horse shit. And but that's my thought. And it doesn't mean it doesn't mean you can't take the opposite thing. Some people, Jonathan, need, they have the kind of brain where they kind of need to be mapping things out years in advance. And there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, those people tend to be very successful in my experience. So I'm not even saying my way is the best. It's probably not. I would compare it to my way of doing email and Andre Chaperone's way of doing email. He's got this long-term like storyboarding out sequences and all that. And some people love that and need that. Okay. And then there's people like me who are like, shoot, I can't even think past like one email. You know, like all I can do is write one a day and just let it go with the flow. So it's the same thing. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this. I think you just have to go with what, Connor, I would guess that you are more like me, or you wouldn't ask this question, that you just go as far as you can see. When you get there, you shall see farther. Okay, enough said. Next question. This is from the lovely Naomi Kutner. I'm sure that I butchered her name there. Question. I have difficulty simplifying my business. Each time I try to make it simple, something comes along and I make it complicated again. How do you keep your business to just one email a day and one back-end product? What do you do if you want to add stuff in, but it'll make things more complicated? Well, first of all, I don't have it down to just one email and then one back-end. That's just what I'm telling people to do, because when they get there, they'll see farther. You know, piggybacking on the last question, I have a whole catalog of stuff I sell, and a whole, 60 plus back issues of my newsletter that I back end sell, my Copy Slacker course, and the 10-minute workday, and all my Amazon books and all that. I back end all that stuff. The email player's crib sheet, and on and on and on. I'm always adding stuff. So it's not like I just sell one thing. But I do believe in the simplicity of build a list, send an email every day selling one product, more or, basically. Sometimes I veer from that, but for the most part, sell that one flagship product. And then when you sell them your flagship product, then sell them something else or several something else's. It doesn't matter at that point, but this is direct response. I mean, this is how it's always been done. You spend money to get a name, and then you back and sell them something, and that's how you make your profit. And so that's about as simple as it gets. A real life example, Jonathan, will be the old Ben Settle Show podcast, and then subsequently the El Bembo's Apprentice thing, which, that was me making the same mistake Naomi is making about, okay, I have this simple thing here. Let me complicate it.
Very much.
And I mean, did it not? I mean, and that misery spread to several people, right? So I've learned my lesson well on that one. And that's why we're back to just this podcast. It's not complicated. There's no store. There's no transcripts. There's none of that. It's just a podcast. And basically I talk about email players or other, I'll mention like my villains book or whatever. But this podcast is essentially to get people to trust me, that I know what I'm talking about, and to eventually subscribe to email players. It's it's supplementary. Well, that's a big word for me, Jonathan. Supplementary to my emails. And that's as simple as it gets. I mean, I try to keep it simple. Jonathan and I have had long talks about this,
complicated
we've had long
talks.
walks in the moonlight holding hands about this and talking. And we realize that simplicity is better. No complicated stuff. So I don't know, Naomi, I think you just have to just look at things and say, okay, I'm going to have an opt-in page. I'm going to sell one product to them. And when they buy, and I'm just going to relentlessly do that. And then when they buy something, I'll sell those buyers one thing and start with that. But try to keep that basic structure. You can back end sell as much as you want to the buyers, but for now, go as far as you can see. When you get there, you shall see farther. Next question, Jonathan.
Real quick, Ben, you know what I think makes it easier for the way that you do things is by selling continuity and it being a newsletter, you're actually doing new stuff every month. So you have that little part already taken care of and built in. And so that might complicate things for people, but I found that it's easier to write a newsletter and sell to that newsletter each month. So I get to get all my new creative energy out and still be selling only one product.
Absolutely. And it's like built-in back-end sales. And it doesn't have to be newsletter, any kind of continuity. That's what my whole 10-minute workday product, that's the whole engine behind it, is find a product that's continuity based. Most people don't want to do a print newsletter and shouldn't do one, quite frankly, because they're not going to stick with it. A lot of people are better with video. They could do a monthly video on YouTube or something, or a monthly Facebook group, whatever you want to do it. Interview, whatever it is. I mean, it doesn't have to be like a news. And everybody, membership sites, fine if you really like that. Jonathan and I don't do membership sites very well. But, so it really does come down to that. It's very simple. All right. So this next question is from Terry Sassone. I hope I pronounced her name correctly, but I'm sure I didn't. My question is definitely mindset. My head is shoved pretty far up my ass on this one point. Okay. I like this one. I'm now the proud owner of your course, 10-Minute Workday. And thank you for that, Terry. I hope you're enjoying it. I'm optimistic that by the time your podcasts air, I will have my head removed and be well on my way to writing daily emails. My thoughts on this topic have kept me on the sidelines in my comfort zone, clinging to my wubba. I guess that means like a blanket.
Oh.
For a couple of years now. I fear there may be others that struggle with this. So here goes. Be kindish if you choose to mock me. God, everybody still thinks I'm going to mock them. Do you have to be an we only mock Monique, okay, in this show. Jonathan, I got to pick on her even though she's not here. Do you have to be an expert in the industry you decide to start writing about? The loop that plays in my head is, why would someone listen to me if I'm not, i.e. an expert? Well, first of all, if you don't have to, you'll be an expert by just sending a daily email out every day. You will become an expert to that list, as long as you know what you're talking about. You can also piggyback on other experts. So, for example, Jonathan and I and the esteemed Doberman Dan were toying around with an idea of doing some kind of direct mail product until Dan basically told us we're fools for the plan we came up with, and basically very pessimistic about the direct mail, the being able to do such a thing. It was very much a reality thing that hit me, at least, and I'm glad he said it. But what we were going to do is create a product that was basically Jonathan interviewing various experts on whatever market we were going to choose. We didn't even know what market we were going to go after. And that would be the product, which has built-in experts then. You don't have to be the expert if your content is created by experts. So that's one way to do it. Get yourself on podcast interviews, and media interviews are even better, like real media. That gives you a lot of credibility. Don't ask me to be on my podcast, because this podcast, Jonathan, I'm not doing guests. So
at all?
Not doing guests. I don't think so, unless we do some kind of joint venture or something. I don't want to do guests, man. In fact, if you want guests, listen to the old Ben Settle Show archives on my site. We do a few guest shows now, but nah. And, and it's funny because I always get people like trying to invite themselves on the show and all that. But the reality is I don't want guests. I'm the guest. Okay, I have two personalities, and I have Ben and El Bembo, and one of those is the guest every time, and whatever. And one last thing, Terry, and this comes back to mailing daily. It gives you a chance to demonstrate your expertise. Demonstration will do more for your credibility than anything else. So by mailing daily, and people say, well, Ben, don't you have like a vested interest in telling everyone to mail daily? Yes, absolutely. I'm biased on this. Whatever, who cares? It's the truth. Build a list, mail it daily. And that's it. You will automatically start building up that credibility right from the start. So I wouldn't worry about it too much, Terry. I wouldn't get yourself too, hyped up about this or worked up or keyed up about it. Sounds like you're a little nervous about this kind of stuff, but you don't need to be. Build your list, mail it, and they will come. Okay, we're going to go one more question here, Jonathan. All right. And then I'm ending this show for the day. Paul Magaji, Magaji, which basically means there's no way I'm going to pronounce that name correctly. How can I stand out where there are thousands in my market already super active and trying to claim a distinction? I'm guessing that Paul's in the internet marketing world or weight loss or something like that. And I'm going to give Paul the exact same. In fact, this could like solve so many problems. It's like the duct tape of the marketing world. Build a list and mail it every day. That's how you stand out to your market, to your list. The people on your list, you do it right. Do it the way I teach, at least, and email players especially. And you will automatically stick out over time. It may not happen overnight, but you mail them the way I teach, and you're going to be just fine. Okay? To your list, you will be the one they listen to. And you will be at the top of mind status. And even though there's people out there with bigger names than you and more credibility, if you're doing it correctly, they will look at you as the one that they trust. So, Jonathan, we'll do another Q&A episode probably in a couple weeks, but for now, I think that does it. Anything you want to say other than before you say anything? The next show is going to be about who you associate with and how to pick the people you should be associating with. And I got a very special testimonial from a very unlikely source that I'll be sharing with you, and that'll be next week.
Okay. All right. So that is a wrap for the bensettle.com podcast. We'll be back in your earbuds next week. Thanks for tuning in.
You've been listening to the bensettle.com podcast. To get your hands on a free issue of Ben Settle's prestigious $97 per month email players newsletter, simply go to www.bensettle.com.
This is the podcastfactory.com.